In September 1980, two detectives from Madrid, Juan and Pedro, are sent to a remote town in the Guadalquivir marshes of southern Spain. Their assignment is to investigate the disappearance of two teenage sisters who vanished 3 days earlier during the town's annual festival. The missing girls are 17-year-old Estrella and her 16-year-old sister, Carmen. After checking into a hotel, the detectives receive a report from the local police. A woman saw the two girls climbing into a Citroën shortly before they disappeared. Around town, Carmen and Estrella have a reputation as carefree girls who stay out late and are always looking for excitement. Franco died in 1975, but the military still holds enormous influence here, and real democracy in Spain is still far from settled. The next morning, the detectives borrow a car from the local police, since their own is being repaired, and drive to the home of the missing girls' parents. The father, Rodrigo, runs a small ferry boat across the local river. The mother is named Rocio. Inside the house, Juan and Pedro notice photographs of the sisters, a stack of job recruitment brochures aimed at young women, and a yellow car parked out back. When they ask whether the girls might have run off or if there had been any family trouble, Rodrigo simply shakes his head. Rocio explains that both girls' clothes and bank books are missing, which suggests they may have left on their own. Rodrigo only begs the detectives to bring his daughters home. Once Rodrigo steps away, Rocio quietly slips Juan an envelope and asks him to keep it from her husband, who is deeply humiliated by the rumors about their daughters. Inside the envelope is a partially burned roll of film. The surviving images show Carmen and Estrella naked in a room with an unidentified man. His face cannot be seen because part of the film was destroyed. The detectives move on to the girls' classmates, who say Carmen and Estrella were last seen near a car around midnight and often talked about leaving town for a better life. Another witness remembers a Citroën 6 parked near a bend in the road outside her home. She could not tell how many people were inside, but the girls were not being forced. They looked happy and were even laughing, which means they knew whoever was in the car. As they leave, Pedro remembers a key detail. Rodrigo also owns a yellow Citroën 6. Their next stop is Angelita, a local fortune teller who lives in a floating house on the river. She claims her dead mother's spirit sent her a message revealing that the missing girls can be found in an abandoned farmhouse. The story sounds ridiculous, but with almost no leads, the detectives decide it is worth a look. At the deserted property, they find old political slogans painted on the walls, praising Franco and promising eternal victory for his supporters. While searching, they discover a well, and Pedro pulls a bag out of the water. Inside is a stocking believed to belong to Estrella. The following morning, the search continues around the farmhouse. A man suddenly bursts out of the reeds carrying a freshly killed deer and tries to run. Juan fires a warning shot and the man stops. His name is Jesus, a local hunter, and he ran only because he was hunting without a license. He says nobody has been going in or out of the farmhouse, so he is let go. Meanwhile, two locals walking through the marshes make a horrifying discovery. Two young girls are floating in the water. The bodies are Carmen and Estrella. They did not run away and they were not kidnapped. They were murdered, and the sight is so disturbing that Pedro throws up. The forensic team reports that Carmen suffered stab wounds and burns on her left hand. Estrella's body also showed signs of violence, and 3 fingers on her left hand had been cut off. Based on the injuries found, investigators believe both girls may have suffered abuse before losing their lives. They also estimated that the bodies had remained in the marsh for approximately 2 days before being discovered. A journalist named Trump arrives and starts taking photos without permission, so Juan drives him off. Since no blood was found at the scene, the detectives conclude the murders happened elsewhere. Tire marks show a vehicle turned around nearby, which suggests the killer panicked after noticing someone close by. Their superior orders them to solve the case quickly and quietly to avoid panic, especially since workers in the region are already striking for higher wages. The detectives deliver the news to the parents, and Rodrigo is so devastated he can only strike his own head in grief. Back at the hotel, they find a mysterious folder waiting for them. Inside are printed color photos taken from the burned film roll, and 2 clues stand out. The man has a triangle tattoo on his hand, and a mounted deer antler hangs on the wall of the room. That night, a drunk man named Castro shows up with a shotgun, demanding to see them. Once the weapon is taken away and he calms down, he tells a disturbing story. Years earlier, his girlfriend Beatrice and his sister Adela were both murdered, their bodies dismembered and dumped in the marshes. The next day, Juan shares new forensic findings. Investigators found semen on Estrella's stocking, and the suspect's blood type is AB. Juan has also requested a list of everyone in the region who owns a Citroën 6. His own health, meanwhile, is failing from heavy drinking. Reviewing the old files on Beatrice and Adela, the detectives spot something important. The same kind of job recruitment brochures found in Carmen and Estrella's home also turned up in that case. Jesus leads them to Beatrice's old house, abandoned for years, where Pedro finds a camera full of tourist photos. Among them are pictures of Beatrice, Carmen, Estrella, and a teenage boy named Queenie. Adela's grandmother then explains that Adela always wore a necklace she treasured and had been heartbroken after being abandoned by a handsome young man named Queenie. That name keeps coming up, so the detectives start watching Queenie and spot him at a local school, where they learn he is dating Hillary, a classmate of both sisters. They follow Queenie as he takes Hillary to a nearby house, but he realizes he is being watched. He corners Pedro and pulls a knife, and during the struggle, they finally get a clear look at his hand and see the same triangle tattoo from the photos. Juan strikes him and brings him in for questioning. Queenie admits he had been dating Carmen for months, but claims he was with friends the night the sisters disappeared. He insists he never knew Adela or Beatrice, even though the detectives already have photos showing him with Beatrice. He explains that away by saying they only crossed paths at a party once. For now, Queenie is released, but the detectives have no intention of letting him out of their sight. That evening at a cafe, one pattern becomes impossible to ignore. All four victims were young women of similar age. Adela disappeared in September 1977, Beatrice in September 1978, and Carmen and Estrella in September 1980. Every disappearance happened during a busy local celebration, when crowds filled the streets and nobody paid attention. And the triangle tattoo proves Queenie is the man from the burned film roll. Pedro leaves to visit Trump about the film roll. Trump says it is a rare, imported product very few people still use, so it might be possible to trace who bought it. He agrees to look into it, but only in exchange for material, which forces Pedro to hand over the autopsy photos of the sisters. After the funeral, Rocio approaches the detectives. She found her daughter's bank books hidden inside Rodrigo's car. The detectives confront Rodrigo but pretend they found the books themselves, so his wife will not be blamed. Under pressure, Rodrigo admits he is drowning in debt to loan sharks and took money from his daughter's savings. Sensing he is still hiding something, Juan pushes harder until Rodrigo confesses more. 2 months earlier, he found a kilogram of drugs floating in the river, sold them, and used the money to buy the yellow Citroen. His debts only got worse, and the loan sharks even sent men to seize property from his home. This raises a troubling possibility that Carmen and Estrella may have been killed because of their father's debts. Following that lead, Pedro inspects the boats on the river for drugs and notices a local police officer having a private conversation with a fisherman. Meanwhile, Juan watches Queenie take Hillary to a hunting lodge. Shortly after, a man in a hat arrives and goes inside as well. Before Juan can investigate, someone attacks him from behind and knocks him out until evening. Oh! When the detectives meet again, Pedro learns Hillary is supposedly safe at home. He also tells Juan the local police can no longer be trusted, since some of them may have been bribed to protect a drug operation in the area. Queenie is brought in again and questioned about the man in the hat, but denies anyone else entered the lodge. Then comes a major breakthrough. Queenie's blood is tested, and his type is not AB, which means he cannot be the man who raped and murdered the sisters. Their superior orders them to wrap up the case quickly and warns that any future arrest requires official authorization first. The detectives visit Hillary at home to ask who the man in the hat was and why there are marks on her wrist. Terrified, she denies that any man entered the lodge and claims the mark is just an irritation. As the questioning continues, she becomes distressed and calls for her mother, forcing them out. It only deepens their suspicion, so they secretly tap the family's phone line. Next, they return to the lodge with Jesus. Inside one room, they find a mounted deer antler on the wall, the same one from the photos. This is the room where the mysterious man abused Carmen and Estrella. The caretaker, a woman named Dolores, claims the owner lives in Valencia and the lodge has been closed for years. Juan challenges her, since he personally saw Queenie, Hillary, and the man in the hat go inside. Pressured, Dolores admits she does not know the man's identity, but reveals that he regularly rents rooms by the day, pays directly into her bank account, and always tells her not to interfere with anything happening there. On the way out, a group of fishermen stop their car and escort them back to Angelita's floating house, where they reveal a secret. Several of them have been smuggling drugs through the river, and Rodrigo did not simply find those drugs floating in the water. He stole them. Still, they swear they had nothing to do with the murders. One is willing to share valuable information, but only if the detectives keep the police away from the river so the smuggling can continue. The detectives agree. The fisherman then reveals that on the same day the sisters disappeared, he saw a man throwing a bag into the well at the farmhouse. It was around 5 in the morning and too dark to see the man's face, but he remembers the vehicle. It was a white Citroën Dyne 6 with a sticker on the rear window, showing a woman with long hair and a wide-brimmed hat. The next day, Adela's grandmother provides a new lead. Adela once worked at the Hotel Mediodía in Malaga and had a friend named Sebastian. The hotel confirmed Sebastian was already fired, but some of his belongings are still there. That night, someone slips a note under Juan's door, telling him to come alone to a cross monument at 7:30 the next morning. Looking outside, Juan is surprised to see Pedro leaving the hotel late at night. Pedro is meeting Trump again. The journalist has traced the rare film rolls to a shop called Aguila Fotografi in Seville, where Quinny had been buying them regularly and paying in advance every month. Pedro asked for one more favor. In one photo, a mirror seems to catch the reflection of the person behind the camera, and if the image can be enhanced, they might identify the photographer. Before Pedro leaves, Trump recognizes Juan from his past. He knows Juan was once a member of Franco's secret police and had been implicated in the shooting death of a young woman during a 1971 protest. The next morning, Juan arrives at the cross monument at 7:30, and the person waiting is Rocio, who has brought Hillary. Hillary has finally decided to confess what happened at the lodge. Quinny ordered her to undress and tied her to a bed, then invited the mysterious man in. She never saw his face, but she remembers two things. He wore expensive cologne, and his hands felt unusually soft. The stranger photographed her while Queenie threatened to release the pictures if she ever spoke. She was not killed, but the experience left her too traumatized to talk during earlier interrogations. Meanwhile, Pedro inspects Sebastian's belongings at Hotel Mediodía and finds stacks of job recruitment brochures nearly identical to the ones tied to the victims. Even more concerning, police records revealed that Sebastian had a history of serious criminal offenses, and an arrest warrant had been issued for him 2 years earlier. However, despite ongoing efforts, authorities had been unable to locate him. At the same time, Juan visits the factory where Quinny works, where workers are protesting for higher wages. He notices the owner, Alfonso Corrales, leaving in a wide-brimmed hat. Introducing himself, Juan notices Alfonso's hands are soft and that he wears an expensive fragrance, matching Hillary's description almost perfectly, and begins to suspect Alfonso is the man they are hunting. Later that night, Pedro spots a white Citroën Dyne 6 with the exact sticker the fisherman described. He notes the plate and gives chase, and during the pursuit, he catches a glimpse of a young girl peering out from the trunk, but he cannot catch the car. The detectives report to their superior, but a records check shows Alfonso Corrales does not own a Citroën Dyne 6. Pedro insists both Alfonso and Quinny be brought in that night, and Alfonso's blood tested immediately. Their superior refuses, arguing it can wait until morning and that soft hands, cologne, and a hat are not enough to act. Pedro is furious, convinced their superior is protecting Alfonso because he is wealthy and influential. The tension boils over when Pedro confronts Juan for staying silent, bringing up the 1971 shooting. Juan claims it was an accident and that another officer fired the fatal shots. Setting the argument aside, they listen to Hillary's tapped phone. The tapes reveal a call between Hillary and Sebastian from hours earlier. Sebastian promised to help her get a job at Hotel Mediodía and arranged to meet at their usual spot. When investigators trace the number he called from, they make a startling discovery. It belongs to the hunting lodge. Juan and Pedro rush there with Jesus. Instead of threats, Juan calmly describes what happened to Carmen and Estrella before they died. Investigators concluded that the sisters had suffered prolonged and horrific abuse before losing their lives. The evidence indicated that they had endured unimaginable suffering during the ordeal. The details shocked Dolores. She breaks down in tears, insisting she never knew how brutally they were treated and that she is never present when the lodge is rented. Then the detectives ask about the other caretaker, and this time she finally gives a name. The man is Sebastian, who once asked for work because he needed a place to hide, though she never knew what from. Now the pieces fit together. There are two people involved. Sebastian is the main predator, while Quinny has been helping him all along. Sebastian always dressed well and wore expensive cologne to appear wealthy and connected. Their victims followed a clear pattern: all young women who received little attention at home, stayed out late, lived independently, and dreamed of escaping their small town. Sebastian and Quinny lured them in with fake job offers that never existed, and girls desperate for a new life were willing to do almost anything to secure them. Dolores reveals that Sebastian has been living in an abandoned house, and the detectives head there at once. Sebastian is gone, but the evidence is overwhelming. Inside, they find blood-stained women's clothing, Adela's necklace, and stacks of fake employment contracts tied to the victims. Then Jesus spots Sebastian's car trying to flee, and a pursuit begins. Heavy rain has turned the roads to mud, and Sebastian's vehicle gets stuck, so Jesus guides the detectives through a shortcut to cut him off. Sebastian spots them and opens fire, hitting Jesus in the hand. Juan and Pedro split up and close in. The confrontation turns violent. Juan is shot in the shoulder, and Pedro is knocked unconscious. As Sebastian prepares to kill Pedro, Juan, barely conscious, comes at him with a knife and stabs him repeatedly, killing him. When they open the trunk of Sebastian's car, they find Hillary inside, badly injured but alive. The hunt is over. Queenie is later arrested and sentenced for helping Sebastian carry out his crimes. A few days later, both detectives have recovered. News of the marshland murders spreads across the country, and their photos appear in the newspapers as the men who solved the case. Before heading home, they spend one final evening with the locals at a cafe. Juan enjoys the company of the women there, while Pedro only wants to see his wife and child again. Later that night, Pedro meets Trump at the same cafe. He insists Juan was not responsible for the shooting during the 1971 protest, that it was an accident. But Trump produces evidence that changes everything. Among his old photos from the demonstration is a clear image of Juan holding a pistol and firing at the girl. And it does not stop there. Trump explains that Juan once earned the nickname the Crow for his brutality, that he personally tortured countless people, and that he was one of Franco's most trusted men. Pedro is left speechless. Back at the hotel, he wrestles with what to do. The man he worked beside suddenly seems no different from Sebastian or Queenie, and Pedro's hatred for Franco only makes it harder. But in the end, he makes his choice. He tears up the photographs. Maybe Juan has changed. Maybe the man beside him now is not the same man who served Franco years ago. And more importantly, the nightmare that haunted the marshland is finally over. So the moral of the story is, if a job offer sounds too good to be true, maybe don't follow a guy with expensive cologne into a random hunting lodge.